If you're around heavy machinery, they're not quiet. But have you ever really stopped to think about what those sounds mean? They're not just noise, it's a language. A machine that's in trouble will literally tell you what's wrong, kind of like a patient describing their symptoms to a doctor. You just have to know how to listen.
So, what is that sound? What are we supposed to be listening for? How do you tell the difference between a normal, healthy machine hum and a genuine cry for help? Well, it almost always boils down to two very different and very bad sounds.
First up, you've got cavitation. This is a steady, high-pitched whine. It's the sound of a pump that's literally starving. It's screaming for oil. Then you've got something totally different, aeration. This is a much more chaotic, rattling sound. It honestly sounds like someone dumped a handful of marbles or gravel inside the pump. Same component, totally different problems.
Okay, so you've heard the noise, you know something's wrong, and your first instinct is probably to just jump right in and get your tools, right? But wait, hold on. Before you touch a single bolt, we have to talk about the golden rule, the single most important procedure in any industrial workplace. See, the very first thing you do has absolutely nothing to do with hydraulic oil or pumps or filters. It has everything to do with making sure you go home in one piece at the end of the day. It's a procedure called LOTO. That stands for lockout, tagout, tryout. And it is the absolute 100% non-negotiable first step. Now, the full official procedure can have 9 or more steps, but we can boil it down to 4 critical phases. First, prepare and notify. Let everyone who might be affected know what you're about to do. Second, shut down and isolate, and I mean using the proper energy isolating device, not just hitting the stop button. Third, you lock, you tag, and you get the machine to a zero energy state. That means bleeding off any stored pressure. And finally, the step that's so crucial, you try out. You physically try to start the machine to prove without a doubt that it is completely de-energized.
And this is the heart of the whole thing, a physical, personal lock. It's such a simple little device, but it is an unbreakable guarantee that nobody can just wander by and accidentally turn that machine back on while you're working on it. One person gets one lock. It's that simple and it's that important. Okay, the machine is safe, the area is secure, everything's locked out. Now we can put on our detective hats and get to the bottom of that sound we heard. Was it that high-pitched whine of cavitation, or was it the gravelly rattle of aeration? All right, let's start with cavitation. This is what happens when the pump is trying to suck in more oil than the system can feed it. It creates a vacuum, a low-pressure zone, that's so strong it literally rips the air that's already dissolved in the oil right out of it, forming these tiny vapor bubbles. As soon as those bubbles hit the high-pressure side of the pump, they implode violently. And that implosion is what causes that distinct whining sound and a ton of damage. So, what's causing this oil starvation? Well, it's usually some kind of blockage. The number one culprit, most of the time, is a dirty or clogged suction strainer. But it could also be a plugged-up breather on the reservoir that's not letting air in as the oil level drops. Heck, even the oil itself can be the problem. If it's too cold, it's too thick to flow right. If it's too hot, it just creates vapor way too easily.
And check this out. Here's a perfect real-world example of how weird this can get. There's a story about a plant in Georgia that just destroyed 5 pumps in a single week. The maintenance crew was going crazy. They couldn't find the suction strainer where the diagram said it should be. So finally, they drained the whole reservoir. And there it was. It had broken off and was just floating around, and ever so often it would get sucked up against the pipe, starving the pump. A single simple part caused thousands of dollars in damage. Now, let's talk about our other culprit, aeration. This is a totally different beast. Here, the pump isn't starving, it's breathing. It's sucking in outside air through a leak somewhere on the suction side of the pump. And because that line is under a vacuum, oil doesn't leak out, air leaks in. And that's what gives you that chaotic marbles in a can sound. So, where's the air getting in? Well, the most common cause is just a simple leak in the suction line. A loose fitting, maybe a bad O-ring, or a tiny crack in a hose. A worn-out shaft seal on the pump itself is another huge one. And you can even cause it yourself with a low fluid level. If the oil gets too low, it can create a little whirlpool, a vortex, just like water going down the drain, and it'll suck air right from the top of the tank. And here's another fantastic story that's also a great diagnostic trick. An auto plant was being plagued by pump failures and that rattling aeration sound. A consultant came in and had a millwright just squirt a little oil on each fitting along the suction line. As soon as the oil hit one particular fitting, the pump went quiet for a second. The oil had temporarily sealed the air leak. Turns out, that one fitting had just vibrated loose after 12 years of service. So we've diagnosed the problem, we found the loose fitting or the clogged strainer, and we fixed it. Awesome. But we're not done. Not even close. Both cavitation and aeration contaminate the oil and beat up the system. So the next step is the treatment, a full, proper system flush to give it a clean bill of health.
But here's something that might surprise you. A poll from Machinery Lubrication found that only about 28%, less than a third, of plants actually use the most thorough, best practice cleaning and flushing methods. That means a whole lot of systems are probably getting a quick rinse, leaving behind nasty contaminants that are just going to cause more problems down the road.
So, what does doing it right actually look like? Well, the ideal process can be broken down into 4 main phases. First, you drain the system while the oil is still hot. That heat helps keep all the contaminants suspended so they flow out with the old oil. Second, you got to physically get in there and clean the reservoir with lint-free rags. Third, you circulate a special low-viscosity flushing fluid and filter it over and over until it's squeaky clean. And finally, you drain that flushing fluid, put in brand new filters, and carefully refill the system with fresh, new hydraulic oil. Okay, that's a ton of work, right? Which leads to a really important question. After all that draining and cleaning and flushing and refilling, how do you know, for sure, that the system's lifeblood, that new oil, is actually clean enough?
And that brings us to our final step, the checkup. Just like a doctor runs blood tests to make sure a patient is healthy, we need to test our hydraulic fluid to verify that our fix actually worked. The way we do this is with the industry standard, the ISO 4406 Cleanliness Code. Now, it sounds super technical, I know, but you can just think of it as a report card for your hydraulic fluid. It's a simple, universal language that everyone uses to talk about how clean or dirty oil is.
So let's break down a sample code like 17139 so it's not so intimidating. Each number represents a different particle size. And just for reference, a human hair is about 70 microns thick, so we are talking about microscopic stuff here. The first number, the 17, tells you about the number of particles that are 4 microns and bigger. The 13 is for particles 6 microns and bigger, and the 9 is for 14 microns and bigger. Now here's the key part. That number, like 17, isn't the actual count. It's a code for a range. So a 17 means there are between 640 and 1,300 of those tiny particles in a single milliliter of oil. It's just a really precise way to get a health snapshot.
So let's wrap this all up with the machine doctor's orders. It's pretty simple. First, you listen to the sounds your machine is making. Second, you lock it out to keep yourself safe. Third, you diagnose the root cause. Is it cavitation or aeration? Fourth, you clean the system with a proper thorough flush. And finally, you check your work by testing the fluid's cleanliness with an ISO code. It's a complete cycle of machine care.
And that brings us all the way back to where we started. Every whine, every rattle, every little change in how that machine sounds is a piece of information. Your machines are constantly talking, constantly telling you how they're doing. The only real question is, are you listening?